Real estate investment presentation. Housing starts. Get ready because we're raising the stakes with real estate. As we think about what housing starts are and how the housing starts statistics are put together, we want to keep in mind how we might use that for our own real estate investment strategies for the particular areas that we are investing in. So a couple things that you want to keep in mind as we go through this information are that the housing starts can give an overall idea of the economic health on a general level, as well as the economic health on a regional and local level, which is one of the reasons that the statistics are compiled, which is great for us because that statistical information can then be used on our basis to get an idea of the national health as well as the local health. We can also get an idea of what kind of restrictions might be in place and what kind of trends are in place. In other words, what are the trends with regards to the type of housing that are being started on the national level? What are the trends on the local level? Are there any restrictions that are being in place with regards to the national level and more particularly in the local level? In other words, are there the zoning restrictions, construction type of restrictions, and what kind of impact might those have for our particular strategy with regards to investing? Those restrictions possibly being good, possibly being bad, depending on, what our investment strategy will be. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail as we go. We're going to be referencing here Investopedia by Adam Hayes, noting that Investopedia is a place you can go to look up investment-related terminology and continue your research from there. So what are housing starts? The term housing starts refers to the number of new residential construction projects that began during any particular month. So obviously, when we're talking about housing, we have the situation where you have the existing housing that's in place, and then you have the new housing that is in place that could be started. The new starts then is going to be, of course, increasing the housing supply that is available. And as you think about the housing supply that is increasing, what will be the impact of that in the particular area that you are in? How does that line up to your investment strategy? In other words, it could be good or it could be bad, because remember that if you already own the home, if there's restrictions on housing and you're in a popular area, that's going to limit demand, which could actually increase the prices of the current homes that are in existence. If the housing starts then are allowed to be constructed, then you've got more supply that's going to go up, which provides an opportunity to invest in the area, but it could actually have a declining or slowing of an increase in terms of the valuation overall. You also want to be considering the different types of homes that are being constructed. Are they single family? Are they multi? And so on and so forth. We'll get into that in a bit more detail. So as such, it is a key economic indicator. So from an economic standpoint, from just a national economic and regional standpoint, it's a great economic indicator, and therefore the data is quite important just for that purpose. And so we get some nice data that's going to be compiled for us that we can then use and access. The housing start statistics are released on or around the 17th of each month by the U.S. Commerce Department. So that's where you want to go and take a look at this. You could dig into this in more detail at the U.S. Commerce Department. The report includes building permits, housing starts, and housing completions data, all of which are compiled from surveys of home builders across the country. So again, you want to go to the U.S. Commerce Department to start to dig into these numbers. Understanding housing starts. Housing is a key part of the U.S. economy, which has an effect on related industries such as banking, the mortgage sector, raw materials, employment, construction, manufacturing, and real estate. So in general, the housing starts can be an idea or an indication of the overall economy from a national and regional area, which is why there's so much focus on it, why the statistics are put together for us, which is great for us to be able to then use. In a strong economy, people are more likely to purchase new homes. So obviously, if the economy is doing good, people have more money, they're going to want new homes. There'll be the demand then for the housing. Conversely, people are less likely to buy new homes in weak economies. This is what makes the new residential construction report, commonly referred to as housing starts, a critical indicator of broader economic strength. A housing start is counted when construction begins on the footings or foundations of the residential structure. So remember, we're talking about a new start that's happening, more construction, more supply that is going to then be available. When do you count that supply? Because these things can be important with regards to when they're going to be hitting the numbers in terms of new housing. The data is divided into different categories. Again, this is going to be important for your particular strategy in the particular region you are in, because we have these single family homes, we've got the townhomes and condominiums, and we have the multifamily structures with 5 units or more, such as apartment buildings that are in place. Now, when you're looking into your particular investment strategy for a particular area, the question you want to be looking at, are you looking at the single family homes? Are you looking at the townhomes? Are you looking at things like apartments? And then what's going to be the relationship between the supply and demand of those things in the particular area? Remember, if you're looking at the single family homes, for example, as your primary investment, if the single family homes there are in demand, and they actually restrict so that no new construction can be in place, or possibly they restrict the type of construction to single family homes or something like that through zoning codes or other kind of things, that could actually increase the demand for the single family homes that are currently there. How could they limit construction and whatnot? They might find a new, endangered slug that lives over there that no one's seen, but like one person saw it, and they got like 100 years to determine whether or not the slug is actually there and whether or not it's actually, something like that. You got restrictions, right? If you got the restriction that goes into place, then the housing could stop. And again, that would increase the demand for the current housing that is there. Or you could have zoning restrictions that would say something like you can only build a certain kind of construction, such as single family homes and so on and so forth, which would make it more difficult to get the real estate. The supply would be less, but the current real estate that is in place might, go up over time. So it can work on both ways. So you want to see what your investment strategy will be. If the townhomes are in place, again, you want to see what's the regional area that you're going to be in place in, and what will the impact be with the new townhomes or the apartment buildings in conjunction with the current area that you're thinking of investing in, and your investment strategy related to it. So units in multifamily dwellings start when workers break ground on the building. Each unit is considered a single start, though. So a 25-unit building counts as 25 different housing starts. That, of course, is an important component when you're thinking about the housing starts, when you're looking at, how are they counting this? Is it one building or by unit? So special considerations, the type of new housing starts can reveal nuances of how the economy is developing. So obviously, if you look at the housing starts throughout the country, you'll see, trends with regards to the housing starts, and possibly those trends could reveal things like restrictions and zoning codes and this and that with regards to housing in particular areas. And you'll see relationships between those restrictions and the prices of housing around them as well. And again, those relationships could have a significant impact on the valuation of housing, and therefore on the long-term investment strategy that you might be implementing in whatever particular region that you're looking into. While the overall number of housing starts may convey a general sense of economic direction, understanding what types of housings are being built can give a more tailored assessment. So you want to look at the national trends, and then you want to say, what's my niche? Where's my niche? And what are going to be the economic factors with regards to the niche in comparison possibly to the national data to get an idea of basically your investment strategy. Investors and analysts watch housing starts figures each month and are compared to data from previous months and years. So you've got the data that's streaming through fairly regularly, although of course there are estimates that are going to be involved, and they might revise the data from time to time. Because housing starts can be significantly affected by weather, the numbers are also presented as seasonally adjusted and smooth using statistical formulas. So in other words, especially in areas where you got big differences in the seasons, then you're going to have these seasonal differences. And so they're going to go back in and basically smooth out those. So you got the seasonally adjusted to give you the more even kind of numbers to factor out the differences with regards to the seasons, which of course will limit the housing construction in those areas. The housing starts data are often revised to reflect the most current evaluations. So the latest data that's going to be out there might be revised a little bit later. So you want to make sure that you're taking that into consideration. If housing starts show a decline in new single-family units in favor of multifamily housing starts, it could indicate a supply shortage in looming for the single-family housing. And you can look for trends such as this and again, tailor your strategy towards that. That may lead to price increases for that segment, making those units more of a premium. It could also indicate that the general public is shying away from more expensive housing in favor of seeking more affordable multifamily units. Those are going to be the trends that you're going to have to make an assessment of. In other words, are people just trending away from the idea that they need, the single family unit? Or is it going to be that they're going to want the more single family units in the future and there's going to be less of them around, increasing possibly the demand, increasing possibly the price of it? Single family versus multifamily housing starts. Furthermore, housing starts indicators include reports on apartment construction, another key component to take a look at, because again, the idea would be if you're looking at zoning restrictions and the ability to construct certain kind of constructions, are they allowing more constructions of apartments in a particular area? Do they have restrictions of it in that particular area? And what then will be the impact on the existing stock of housing that's going to be out there, and then try to tailor your investment strategy with regards to the new constructions that are going to be in place, given the fact that those new constructions, whatever they are, will alter the supply and demand that's going to be available in that particular area. So which can also reveal details on inventory for that segment and whether or not prior buildup was more than what the market needed. Single family versus multifamily units starts continued. Speculative builders may launch construction and multi-level apartment buildings in urban areas, for example, anticipating a certain amount of demand for apartment space in a given city. Obviously, when you're talking about urban areas that are increasing substantially in terms of demand, that people want to be in that urban area, to be around the places where the action is, the money's taking place, the jobs are at, then at some point you would think those urban areas would have to grow upwards, right? They're going to have to grow up, and you end up with more stacked, buildings on top of each other, apartment buildings and so on, could be more likely to be in place. Again, that could be a good trend, that could be a bad trend. It just depends on your local area and what you think the trends will be in that particular local area, and then what the opportunities are for the investment there. If there's a drop in demand for such housing, construction companies naturally might pull back on plans to further build up the development in cities. Changes in housing demand can stem from a variety of factors. Salary shifts and job changes can directly affect the feasibility of seeking new home. So if you're looking at like city type of areas, then you would think the cities are generally going to be populated around areas that are going to be drawing in more jobs. That's why they're going to be the hubs, and therefore you would think then they would have to grow up at some point in time, and then possibly grow the ability to have the transportation that's going to be going from possibly suburb kind of communities into the city kind of communities. If you're outside of the central hub city kind of communities in the suburbs, for example, then you might have more situations where they don't want to grow up, right? They're going to try to possibly limit the ability to grow up, having those kind of restrictions that might be in place in those kind of instances. So got to tailor those kind of trends to whatever you're familiar with and what your particular investment strategy is for the region that you're basically looking into. So remember, we're referencing Investopedia, a place you can go to look up investment-related terminology, continuing your research from there. Housing Starts by Adam Hayes. It was updated September 2nd, 2020. You can take a look at there, and note as time passes, they update their resources from time to time, and you can take a look at whether or not they have done so and look at more references and continue your research from that source.